Students. So in the last class of political science, I ended up with the Vietnam War. Now we'll start with the Congo crisis. Now, basically, what happened in Congo was it was a series of civil wars that took place in Congo, and this was because there was a political upheaval. There was a conflict in the Republic of Congo between 1960 and 1965. The crisis began almost immediately after Congo became independent from Belgium, and it ended up unofficially with almost the entire world. Right. So there was a series of civil wars, there were series of proxy conflicts in the Cold War in which Soviet Union and United States supported the opposite factions. Now, what is a proxy conflict? Your question should be, what is a proxy conflict? Now, a proxy conflict is an armed conflict between two states or non-state actors which act on the instigation or on behalf of other parties that are not directly involved in the hostilities. And in order for a conflict to be considered as a proxy war, there must be a direct long-term relationship between the external actors and the ones who are involved. Alright? Now, that was a small description about Congo crisis. And around, say, 1 lakh people are believed to have been killed during this crisis. Okay? Now, next is your Berlin Wall. What happened in Berlin? Now, in Berlin, basically, Western Europe was separated from Eastern Europe. East Germany was supported by Soviet Union, and West Germany was supported by US, UK, and France. Now, East Germany started the construction of a wall to not let the West Germans enter the East Germany. Okay? Now, when this actually took heights was when US chief was stopped while crossing East Berlin. Now, this led to a standoff between US and the Soviets. US President John F. Kennedy finally in 1963 he realized that wall was better than war. Then in 1967 he further challenged Gorbachev, the USSR leader, to tear down the wall, and then gradually political changes happened worldwide. But in 1990 finally it was brought down, the wall. Now, East Germans, as I have already told you, and Soviets, they considered the Western control over portions of Berlin a big threat to East Germany. And Khrushchev made West Berlin the central battlefield of the Cold War. And had US tried to bargain with the Soviets after it gets aware about the missiles that were kept in Cuba, Khrushchev could have demanded to trade the missiles for West Berlin because Berlin was strategically more important than Cuba. And I have explained this in the discussion part of the video. Okay? So that was how the standoff in Berlin took place. Alright? Now, what happened to the other countries? Now, the other countries, especially the third world countries, who did not choose either of the alliances, they were playing a mediatory role. Especially few of them. Now, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru from India, he played a crucial role in mediating between the two Koreas. In the Congo crisis, the UN Secretary General played a key mediatory role. And it was realization on the superpowers' part that war by all means should be avoided. Right? But still, since the rivalries was there, that suspicion led them to be prepared for the war. And how to be prepared for the war? They started maintaining a stock of arms. Because what if either side miscalculated the weapons in the possession of the other side? What if they misunderstand the intentions of the other side? What if somehow a nuclear accident takes place? Now, because of all these suspicions, they maintain the nuclear weapons. But with time, US and USSR decided to collaborate in limiting the nuclear weapons. And they went on the path of having a stable balance of weapons. They decided that could be maintained through arms control. Now, arms control, what does this term means? It has huge significance in the world politics. It is when a country restricts the development of production, stockpiling, or the usage of the weapons. That is your arms control. Now, this arms control between US and USSR took place with number of treaties. First is your Limited Test Ban Treaty, that is LTBT. Okay. Next is your Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And third is your Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. Now, first one, Limited Test Ban Treaty. This basically bans the nuclear weapon test in the atmosphere. That is in the outer space and in the underwater. This came around 1963. Now, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It actually allows only the nuclear weapon states to have the nuclear weapons and stops others from acquiring them. Now, who are these nuclear weapon states? It was later on declared that US, UK, France, Russia and China are your nuclear weapon states. That is the N5 countries. Okay. Now, third, Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. First of all, what do we understand by with anti-ballistic missile? These are a surface-to-air missiles which are designed to counter the ballistic missiles. Now, ballistic missiles are used to deliver nuclear, chemical, biological or conventional warheads in a ballistic flight trajectory. Okay, so this was about the arenas of the Cold War. Now, a detailed information about LTBT, about NNPT, about ABMT is given at the last page of your first chapter. Okay, now let's come to the next part, that is your NAM. Now, NAM holds very much importance in even today's time, because the best way to understand the sense of NAM in the 21st century is to understand how it was formed, why it was formed, and how far does it stands on its principles. Okay, so basically, how was NAM formed? The roots of NAM went back to the friendship of 5 leaders, basically. Yugoslavia's Josip Broz, India's Jawaharlal Nehru, Egypt's Gamal Abdel, Indonesia's Sukarno, and Ghana's Kumar. Now, these 5 leaders, they formulated NAM. NAM was the non-aligned movement. With the very word you can understand, non-aligned, not aligning with either US or USSR. And they have their own movement that is non-aligned. Now, the first summit of NAM was held in Belgrade in 1961. This was the culmination of 3 factors: cooperation among these 5 countries, the growing Cold War tensions, and third, the dramatic entry of many newly decolonized African countries. Now, the first summit of NAM was attended by 25 member states, and over the years it has moreover expanded. Now, since it grew into a popular international movement, countries of various different political systems and interests, they joined it, making it less homogeneous and also made it more difficult to define in a very clear terms. Why? Because you will see that though India or many of its, let's say the Ghana, let's say Indonesia, let's say Egypt, Yugoslavia, though they did not join the alliances, but still they were somewhere involved with the countries. And that is why, since non-aligned stands on the principle of not aligning, it is confused with two important concepts, neutrality and isolationism. But NAM is different with neutrality and isolationism. How? See students, it is very important for you to understand that the policy of staying away from the alliances is basically confused here. The policy of staying away from alliances should not be considered isolationism or neutrality. Non-alignment is not isolationism. The second definition over here. Because isolationism sums up the foreign policy of US from the American War of Independence. Isolationism means remaining aloof from the world affairs. And in comparison to this, India did play a very active role in mediating between the two rival alliances for maintaining peace and stability. In the very last slide, I have explained you this. And their strength was based on their unity, their resolve to remain non-aligned despite the attempt by the superpowers to bring them into their alliances. Then neutrality. Neutrality means staying out of the war. States, those who practice neutrality, are not required to even help in ending a war. And non-aligned states, including India, were actually involved in wars for various reasons. They worked to prevent the war between others. They tried to end the wars which has broken out. So they were somewhere involved. They were even involved as mediators. And there are few other truths which you will come to know by the end of the chapter. What was the role of India over here? Okay, so this is NAM versus neutrality and isolationism. Okay, in the next class we'll continue with the same part, but hopefully we'll complete the chapter and we'll start with new international economic order. Okay, so I'll stop here for the day. Thank you students. If there is any problem, please let me know. Thank you.